Hello and welcome to episode 7 of Genre Blender, the podcast that celebrates storytelling across books, games, TV, and film, and occasionally other things, I suppose. My name is Ryan.
And I'm Kris, and today we are talking about compelling storytelling through gaming. We have moved away from reading for an episode.
I've been looking forward to this for a while, actually.
It's another hobby that Ryan and I share that we do slightly differently. So hopefully we have some different perspectives on
Just slightly.
through gaming. Yeah, absolutely.
Just slightly.
But yeah, it's been a long time coming. Ryan and I sat down and we looked at all the topics that we want to cover at the end of the last episode, and gaming won. So here we are.
Yeah, no, I've been actually dying to do a gaming one for a while, so I'm quite excited about it. Do you want to, and you may or may not, depending on how busy you've been, because I know I've been pretty busy, but I have a few things to contribute, a read, watch, play update?
Yeah, for sure. I've been reading a little bit more. So I think the last episode we did, I was doing an alpha read, and like my brain was just taken up. I was working on my manuscript. That's now off to the dev editor, so that's out of my head until I think
Nice.
the end of this week. I should get it back from her. So I have been reading a little bit more. I read a satire comedy horror by a trans masculine author in the last little bit called The Erstwhile Tyler Kyle. And it was so good. Like, it was a 5-star read for me to say that this
Wow.
was indie and self edited, which a lot of the time I shy away from a self edited book. But I think he's up to he's got a PhD in monsters. Like, he's working through that. He teaches monster stuff
Wow.
at university level. And it was so good. It was like, I don't know how to describe it. It was wild. This guy, and it's very relevant to our age group because this guy is like in his 30s. He's coming off being quite popular as a YouTube star, and he goes to this island to find his B grade actress mother. And it's an old conversion camp. Like, it's super queer, it's super camp, it's horrific. Like, there are some horrifying scenes in this thing, and I just loved it, ate it up. But it was amazing.
Wow.
And then outside of that, I'm on book 4 of The Wheel of Time, The Shadow Rising, as an audio, which it's a 40-hour audio book, so it's going to take me a minute to get through.
Just a minute.
And then gaming, I finished Chef RPG. So I finished the third story arc in Chef RPG, which is all there is available in early access. So I will be
Oh,
here.
that's right. It's early access.
Yeah,
Yeah, cool.
I'll be
Yeah.
here with the world, waiting for the full release to come out. But I did back a Kickstarter for Super Zoo Story, and I backed it for both Rachel and I, so 2 gamer codes when beta access comes out. It's a pixelated zoo where you can crossbreed. All I saw was like pixelated capybaras in an enclosure. I was like, yes, I need to know zero else about this game to pick it up. What about
Amazing.
you? Said you were gaming more.
I don't know if it competes with that. That's something else. Before we move on to that, like, if I had a PhD in monsters, like, I would totally be like introducing myself as that. Hi, I'm Ryan, and I have a PhD in
I have
monsters.
a
How
PhD
about
in
you?
monsters. Like, amazing. So cool.
That's awesome. Cool. I have to check that out. Yeah, I have been gaming a little bit. So on point for the episode topic today, I've actually gotten back into gaming, back into Persona 5 Royal. So I don't know if I've made any main progress on that game because it's like 100 and something hours long, and I'm going to be playing it for the rest of my life at this stage. But I'm having fun with it, so that's the main thing, right?
Like, what is time? Where does one pull 100 hours from these days?
I don't even have like 5 minutes these days, it feels like, with all the adulting that I've been doing, not by choice. But it's fun. I'm having a blast with it. So we'll talk about that more in a little bit. But I'm still reading where I put it, Potato Street Station. But I'm on the last 1/5 of it or something, or I think there's 5 separate sections. I don't know, something like that.
I feel like the
So I'm on the
ending of
last
this
one
book has been
finally.
a long time coming for you. It's been a while getting
And it's
through
book
it.
one.
It is book
I'm
one.
not jumping into the others straight away. I'm gonna read
What's the
his
next
other
one?
stuff first.
The Scar. I think I just got it.
The
Is it the
Scar,
Scar?
or is that? Don't know.
I don't know.
There's,
It's one
there's
of them.
two others.
It's one of the
Yeah.
series.
Yeah, I've got them all in the shelf up there somewhere. But yeah, I'll give it a break for a bit. It's kind of I'm glad I'm reading it. Like, it's something different for me, but it's I'm loving it. It's one of those, you know how sometimes like you come across books or TV shows or games or whatever, and you can say, oh, I really appreciate this, but I don't, like, I'm not in love with it. It's kind of like that. So like, I'm glad I'm reading it, and by the time I have finished reading it, I'm sure it'll be great and I will love it, but
It's
the
more
process of
fantasy
reading
leaning, isn't it?
it kind of.
Yeah.
I don't even know how to explain it, because yes, it is, but also at the same time, it's not like traditional fantasy. It's not, but it's also, I mean, you could say the same with science fiction, because it does lean into that, and philosophy. Like it really is just across all genres.
Remind me to give
but
you
anyway.
the first trilogy that Jenny Wirtz released. It's a sci-fantasy, but it's not not the sci-fantasy that you hate, where like, oh, well, there is a wizard. Maybe it is a sci-fantasy that you hate. But very thematic and very heavy and very beautifully written. I don't know, I think you might enjoy it if you like China Miéville's
Yeah,
series.
I'll give anything a go, but I'm not like committing myself to like finishing books anymore. There's not enough time. Too old for
Ain't that
that.
the truth?
Yeah. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Oh, actually, no, I have watched some TV as well. I've been watching a show called Constellation on Apple TV Plus, and kind of just, I think I don't know, one evening I was just like, "What's this?" I'll just try it out, and it's really good. It's got oh god, what's her name? Numi Rapace,
Oh, yeah.
Swedish
From the Dragon
actor in it.
Tattoo.
Yeah, and she's really good. So like the whole show, like she's the main, and she's killing it. So I was just intrigued with her acting, because she got the chops for it. But it's really mysterious. It's a science fiction, a lot of mystery, kind of where it confuses the heck out of you. You don't know what's going on, but I kind of like that. I think so. It kind of keeps me
I love that in
keeps me watching.
books. So, I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, same. Yeah. So yeah. Anyway, that's about all. Oh, actually, no. I did watch another thing.
I was going to
I've
say,
been watching things.
yeah, you've been watching
Yeah.
things.
I've been watching. I watched Heartstopper as well. All of season 3. So
I still
yeah.
haven't watched season 2. I watched season 1 very quickly and I just never went back to it.
it was good. Look, legit. I cried in pretty much every episode. It just really got me, and it's that kind of a show, of course. But wasn't quite expecting it in quite that way. It was good.
I've been watching a lot of the interviews with the lads on it, because my personality type, I tend to read a lot more interviews, or I'll like read reviews more than doing the actual thing. So like when I tell Rachel what's coming up in like the PS world, like the Sony world, she's like, what, you don't play? Like, why do you know this? I'm like, because I'm obsessed with knowing what is happening without doing it myself. But yeah, so Heartstopper, I've watched a few interviews. I'll get back to it eventually.
Yeah,
I think
it's
that's
short and sweet, so it's not too much of a commitment.
I think that's my, like, I don't want to cry. I don't like having emotions and acknowledging that they exist. So
Yeah.
I'm like,
Oh yeah, I feel you. I was not expecting it, and I think with this one, it's like it goes into the queer topics and stuff, and some of the important things, but I wasn't like crying for the sake of just like this is like stuff I don't want to deal with. It was more just, oh, this is really nice. It was kind of a happy cry.
maybe I won't cry.
So yeah, maybe not. Anyway, I recommend it. I think it's excellent, and I think I'm done now. I think that's all I was watching and playing.
you remember something halfway through the episode and be like, hang on a
Probably.
minute, got it.
Yeah, yeah, probably.
All right, so take us away, Ryan. This is a topic that's near and dear to your heart. For those who don't know, Ryan used to stream over on Twitch. I caught quite a few games over on Twitch, and I bought quite a few games because of you, so thanks for that, and the wallet.
Didn't know
Yeah,
that.
take us away. Take us into storytelling through gaming.
Yeah, I mean, look, I haven't prepared anything for this episode. I thought we just like have a chat. There's a lot to say, but I mean, I find it interesting because we do come at it from different approaches, right? I think one of the things we discovered pretty early on is that I play games for stories. You mostly don't, although maybe that's different. But I mean, lately with you talk about it in a minute.
It's interesting because I feel like all the things I don't look for in a book, I tend to look for in a game or in something that I'm watching, which is just a complete opposite.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I think this is partly why I feel like I've got no time to like go through all my hobbies, because I'm choosing the games that are like 100+ hours long with the, mostly RPGs.
I was going to say, you're
And
choosing
then-
games with an in-depth story that you've got to pay
Exactly,
attention
right?
to. Yeah, yeah.
And it's one of my weaknesses, to be honest, because I love them so much, and then I don't know where they fit into my life because they take up so much time. But I can't help it because they're the games I'm drawn to. but I do find that interesting, just that like because you obviously love stories and they're a huge part of your life in books, and yet you know gravitate towards different types of stories in or potentially no stories in games. Whereas I think for me, I mostly like if I get to choose where I'm experiencing a story, I think games are my favorite just because you are in it. Like you are the one kind of experiencing that firsthand. You get to make the decisions sometimes, mostly, depending on the game. But yeah, you're kind of experiencing it firsthand. And I think there's a lot of experimentation that can happen in storytelling in games that I think maybe a lot of authors of science fiction and fantasy and genre fiction have kind of had their heyday with exploring and experimenting. And I think we're still, there's some things happening right now that, people are experimenting with. But I think for the most part, we all kind of know what to expect when it comes to genre fiction, or it's kind of been done before, or it's variations of something that's been done. Whereas I think with gaming, there's a lot more you can do in how you can tell a story because of just the mechanics and like what happens in the game. So it's kind of an interesting time, right? But funny enough, I'm still drawn to mostly very narrative based, linear games. So even then, like I still don't really go for the experimentation type games. I go for pretty much a book in a game form because I obviously hate myself and don't want any free time. So
Just a glutton for punishment, like even
guess so.
even in your free time, just looking for something to sink your teeth into. I think gaming offers quite a unique world for people to experience storytelling, particularly for people who aren't necessarily visual when they read. What's it called, aphantasia? When, if you're reading a book and you don't necessarily see it, having something like that in a game form where you don't not only get to see it, you get to live it. So those learning styles and that energy that is put into playing a game is completely different. And it creates, like you said, this immersive world where you're in it. Like, that's it. Like, if people want to play games, and Rachel's very similar to yourself in the types of games that she will gravitate towards, and she will often talk to me about like the story of the characters and stuff, and like, oh, this development, especially when she went through her like Mass Effect playthrough again quite recently. Like, this person's doing this person's doing this, or you can do this and it changes this, and you can do this and it changes this, and I'm like, I don't care. I'm glad that you're having a good time, but it's too much for my brain to like just give me Stardew Valley so I can go and cook in my kitchen
Cozy vibes.
and plant my plants and all the things I don't do
Yeah.
in real life. Well, I mean, I cook in real life, but I don't have a farm. I'd love a farm without
Yeah,
the effort and the manual labor.
that's it.
Yeah,
Farm on easy mode, please.
I was reading a couple of articles. I mean, I feel like people know me now at this point. No one's surprised that I've gone and read some articles about storytelling and gaming for the episode. And one of the things that I came across was a website called Game Ace, and I'll have the blog article linked down below for people if you're interested. But it was saying that storytelling in game development it's not just about creating a tale. It's not just about creating that story element, but it is about immersing the players who pick it up in a world that lives and breathes with its characters, with its environment, and it weaves its narrative that enhance the gameplay mechanics. So people really are living in it. And you think of the technology we have nowadays, right? You've got what's called VR, which makes me sick. You would try to make me look at your VR
Yeah,
Mac thing.
yeah.
But I think it's an amazing world out there for people.
Yeah, the sky's the limit with what you can kind of do in terms of telling stories, and I think like you hit on something important there, which I think is the reason why I prefer games for experiencing any kind of story, and I think it's to do with player choice. Because, like, for example, right, a lot of RPGs that I love, they're, I joke that they're 100 plus hours long, and, and like, it's true, they mostly are the ones that I love, and, pretty long games, but you don't have to do everything in the game. Like, there are side quests that you can completely ignore if you want to, and you can just focus on the main story, for example. Things like Final Fantasy, Dragon Quest, those kinds of massive JRPGs. But I think a lot of the time, the side quests, the the quests and the story notes that you could potentially not even notice or experience yourself, you can completely just ignore that. Sometimes they're the best parts of those games. And like I have fond memories of like obviously Mass Effect. I'm in my Mass Effect gear today as well, on brand.
For anyone who can't see because you're listening to it, there's an N7 shirt proudly being displayed on the
Oh yeah,
screen.
for for the audio, thank you for the audio listeners. Yes, I'm in all my N7 gear today for Mass Effect, and I've got you can't see them anyway, even on the video feed, but I do have like Mass Effect stuff all over the place. There's stuff on my shelves. Anyway, I love Mass Effect. It's my favorite game series. But if that's not obvious, but you can like really like there's so much in those worlds, right? Like there's so many branching narrative, dialogue choices where you can really decide how you want to play those games, and you can completely miss, half the game if you want to. You can, ignore that entirely. But I think that's what's cool about it because, the writers of these games, the developers of these games can pour their heart and soul into something, and you could potentially not even experience any of that, I think it's pretty cool that, it's a lot of it is up to you and how you want to approach the game. Like that's a big part of what makes it so interesting to be.
And it creates an emotional connection as well between you and these characters. Like I remember watching Rachel cry, like at the end of Mass Effect 3. I don't know. And just like bawling her eyes out. And then there was a trailer that came out teasing a Mass Effect 4 a couple of years ago. Just tears. And I was like, what is happening right now? Do I need to get you a cup of tea? She's like, I'm just having a moment. Because like these characters mean so much to me, and I would argue that gaming gives people that because you do spend hundreds of hours with these people, like they essentially become virtual friends. Like you care about your choices, and that's just human nature. Again, it's an argument that I would bring forward is we are intrinsically empathetic towards other people. So if you're spending this much time, you're going to get emotionally involved. Maybe that's why I don't play them. I don't need it.
Just discovered that about yourself,
Welcome to Genre Blender, the podcast of revelations.
On every episode.
But it's amazing. And I remember Rach had just moved in to the first house we were ever in, and Assassin's Creed Mirage, no, Assassin's Creed Origin, I think Mirage is the new one, came out, and like I'd never seen her just sit and like every waking second play a game. Was she awake? Didn't have to work yet? Great. Game was on. The second she got home, clothes were off. She was like, what's for dinner? Like playing. I had to be like, you need to go to work tomorrow, so get in bed. She's like, I can't. Like, I remember my mum and dad came over to meet her very early, and she was like, just got to get this thing. And I'm like, wait. But
I have my priorities.
I guess I've never like been that person that just gets so sucked in to like 8 to 10 hours of gameplay. But I kind of love that for her because she's so passionate about the story. I like watching them, but I like to dip in and out while it's happening.
Absolutely. It's interesting, right? Because younger me used to do that too. Like, that was Mass Effect for me. That was every Dragon Age game, all the BioWare games essentially, because a lot of it is what you said before about the characters and those relationships. And a lot of them are actual, like, you can romance a lot of these characters as well, right? There is that avenue, right? So it's really a lot of player choice. But yeah, you get really invested. And so these games for me, same thing. I would, every waking moment I would play them. And I've never until, I think it must have been Mass Effect 2, because the first one I played a little bit late. It wasn't exactly on launch, but Mass Effect 2 I played when it first came out, and I probably finished it in a couple of days, and same with Mass Effect 3. And those are pretty big games. They're not 100 plus hours, but they're like, 40 plus hours or 50, 50 to 60 if you're doing everything. And I still have never played a game as fast as that before, since then. And yeah, it really sucks you in, and it's something you once you're in that world, you don't want to leave it because it's fulfilling something. It's not just escapism. It's just like the story is just so intriguing. You can't like break yourself away from it especially for the neurodivergent folks among us, or the people that are just like, I just need to experience that and nothing else. Thank you. So yeah, but I get what you were saying before about dipping in and out, because I think that's what it comes down to. And I find it hard now to do that, to play a game, straight. I guess it's being an adult as well, right? It's probably something to do
so
with
many
it.
things to do on any day. Yeah, and they all sound dumb when you talk about them, right? It's like, I need to clean the bathroom today. Oh, boring.
Yep. Like, why would you choose to do that?
Yeah.
But no, totally. Like, I can completely understand Rachel there. Like, that was me as well.
Like, I think, look, we're going down the route of neurospicy diagnosis for Rachel at the moment. But just a side tangent, I've got my first food hyperfixation. And I've never had one before. Like, I've never experienced this phenomenon before. And I'm like, is this what it's like for your brain all the time? because I can't stop thinking about this thing, and I know that I'm just going to get sick of it and not want anything to do with it.
Now you
Anyway,
got to tell us what it
so
is.
it's marshmallow fluff, like the jar of fluff. I was like, I don't know why it came into my brain, but I've eaten half a jar in 2 days.
I don't know what I expected you to say. It was
It
not
wasn't
that.
that. Well, look, at least it's
Wow.
40 calories per serve, so we can work that
It's
off.
pretty good though. It's
Um,
pretty good.
but I'm like, I don't know why, and like it just reminded
Yeah.
me of like every second, like looking at this game, experiencing this
Yeah.
game, and like all I can think about is marshmallow fluff. At 33, that sounds so dumb. Dumbest thing.
Embrace it, dude. Embrace it. Amazing.
Um,
Yeah,
so
yeah. I mean, that was Mass Effect for me. That was just like could not.
yeah,
There was nothing else in my life at all. Yeah,
I'm calling in those sick days. We can't say that on the podcast.
of course not.
Um, so there is a well, it's not Bioware anymore because it got bought by EA, didn't it? But you've got Valguard coming out in
It's still Bioware.
in
So
a couple of days' time.
yes, literally, this is like the best gaming week all year because we've got Veilguard coming out and also Life is Strange, the new one, whatever it's called.
See, I have been looking at the trailers for Life is Strange. I'm like, maybe because that's episodic, I
Yeah.
could do it because like there's clear episodes like to end it. I don't know. I don't know. I've got like
Try it.
40
Do
pixel
it.
art
Do it.
games to work through on my Steam library.
Life is Strange, do it, do it.
Um,
Yeah,
I think something else that's kind of cool with gaming, which is quite unique to gaming, is the teams and the amount of people that you have working on every aspect of a game to give it that environment, to give it that story. And you, in a book, it's very linear. It's the author's vision, and like they can be fantastic. We've had great conversations about books. You go to a movie or you watch a TV show, and it's over. Like again, that's someone's vision, and it's what they've made it. It's over in 2 hours or 3 hours if you're a Marvel movie and a Marvel movie fan these days. But then what sticks in your mind with that? Because it's a short period of time and you're now done with it. With a game, like what you're talking about, speaking about playing, 100, 200, 300 hours, like I'd love to see what game you've played the most, and we'll touch on that in a sec. Um, you've
that
spent
was also a
300
question I had for
hours.
you as well.
Yeah, you've spent 300 hours in this world. You're not going to walk away from that and forget it. You're going to walk away from that with the emotional beats and the story beats that you've experienced over that 300 hours. And I think that's so unique to the gaming world that it's kind of sad that as we get older, we see a lot of adults being like, I can't do that anymore. I'm like, no, you absolutely can. Yeah, it sucks because you've got to like find time to do it. But
Yeah,
if that's joy and that's how you want to experience your stories, and it's absolutely valid to go down and do it that way.
yeah, 100%. Yeah, and I think it's because it's with a game because you're the one experiencing it, right? The way you experience the story is just different. It's just inherently different, and I think games that lean into that, they're the ones that really kind of stick with you. Um, but yeah, I mean, so one of the questions I had noted down was basically the same as yours just now. And I want to touch on that, but before that, I want to get into like the different kinds of ways that games tell stories, right? Because we've sort of touched on like the RPGs that I love, the story games that are mostly I guess they mostly consist of like two things, right? So one is the overarching story, and I guess the side quests as well, which most of the time are optional, and then the combat, right? Which for me, I mostly play games for story. So when it comes to like combat and the actual game mechanics, sometimes I feel like they kind of get in the way of my of my story that I'm getting out of the game. I don't know if anyone else shares that issue, but sometimes I'm just like, oh, really, another battle? Come on. But also some games also have storytelling through the actual combat itself or through the game mechanics itself, right? So a lot of puzzle games will tell a story based on like you got to figure stuff out and then more stuff is unveiled, and. So it's kind of interesting how games can do that uniquely in a way that books can't, movies can't, in the same way. I guess the most the closest comparison would be like choose your own adventure stories. I don't know if you ever read those as a kid. Yeah, have you?
I didn't gravitate towards them, like I knew of them, but I was like, no, I want my story to be told for me. It's very true to form.
Yeah,
It's carried through.
yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I was kind of the same. I liked John Marsden wrote a couple of them. There was like Cool School and Creep Street, I think they were
I remember
called. I
Creep
was just
Street.
thinking about them
Yeah.
like just the other day. I was like, oh, they just popped it into my mind. I remember getting those from the library at school, and that was great. I enjoyed those ones. But yeah, for the most part, I wasn't really a big fan either. So there's those ones, and then I'm finding what else is what another kind of story that we're seeing in games more recently, especially as these game companies get really big and have a lot of money. We're seeing these massive AAA games where they're really cinematic and they're very much like movies in game form. And you'll have the big cinematic parts of it, the movie parts of it, and then you'll have like the open world or the combat or the different mechanics in the game, and it will sort of cut back and forth between these big visual narrative sections. I think we're seeing more of that. I know a few that have come out recently. One was the Star Wars Rebel.
Outlanders.
Thank you. Yes, that one's just come
I'm
out.
genuinely interested in playing that, even though I don't care about the
Looks
Star Wars
great.
franchise. I was like, that just looks fun. I want to get in the motorbike in the desert and
Yeah,
fuck around. Like,
that's it.
amazing.
Do you like open world games though, to a point, right? Because they do more of that. I guess dip in, dip out that you can do in smaller games as well.
Yeah, 100%. Like, I just want to go and explore, and I'm a world building guy, like at the heart of it. So, like, I want to go and experience a world. I don't really care about what the characters are doing.
Yeah.
Okay. But you do you, homeboy. Like, I don't care. I'm going to get this motorbike and go and have a look at things.
See ya.
But that's led me into strife when you go into areas where the enemies are like way more experienced than you are. You're like dead immediately. It's why I've never gone back to Witcher 3. Just twice.
Yes, that was notorious for that actually.
Twice I've come out of that game being like, oh, dead. Okay, sick.
Yeah, I like the games that scale with you. So if you go wandering, they're just like around your level.
Yeah.
So I'm seeing more of those kinds of games. Ghost of Tsushima, which I loved, very cinematic game. Horizon Zero Dawn, and there's a new. I only just found out recently. There's also a new remastered version of Horizon Zero Dawn that's
Yeah,
out
it just
this
came
week
out.
as well.
Did you see that Lego Horizon Zero Dawn has also just come out?
Yeah,
And I was like,
it's cute.
maybe.
Yeah,
Like, maybe a Lego
that would be
version.
cool.
Like, yeah.
Because you watched Rachel play that game.
I
right?
did. I watched her play the second one. I don't think we were together for the first one.
Right. So do you know the story? Like, do you remember the story of that game because you were watching it? Or
No,
not
but I
really?
read books that are inspired by it, and I really like them.
Oh,
So,
really?
Yeah.
that's cool. It's because it's got the world itself is kind of interesting.
I just love the
That's what it
creatures.
is.
I just thought they were cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of sci-fi fantasy. So anyway, so there's those like cinematic games, and then I guess the other one that I want to touch on, and this is I guess what you were sort of talking about, and I guess what we were alluding to is more of the creating your own stories, right? So a lot of open world games, a lot of puzzle games, games where you like, for example, there was a game called Star Wars Galaxies. It was an MMO back in the early 2000s. I think it was probably one of the first MMOs that was out. I played a lot of MMOs back in the day. Like they were my bread and butter, all the early ones. But what I really liked about Star Wars Galaxies was it was set in the Star Wars universe, and like you could go to Tatooine and go into the cantina in Mos Eisley and hang out. But and there was some content in that game, but for the most part, what I remember about it and the experience that I had with it was playing with my friends and just creating our own stories, doing our own thing. We actually, you could actually build towns in that game, so you could actually put down buildings and set up your own town, which is something that a lot of MMOs after that game didn't really have, and it was one of the critiques that a lot of us who played Star Wars Galaxies were kind of giving these other newer games because you couldn't just like create your own town, from scratch. But yeah, we'd like put all these buildings down and make our own town, and like you'd have like a town mayor and everything, it's the whole 9 yards. It was really cool. But that's my memory of that game.
I would so compete to be a town mayor. Like, elect
You
me
make a
as
good
your
one.
leader. Like, just let me. I just like planning, so
Yep. Everyone can read books all day and play
I
games. And it's fine.
remember the Halo parties when I was in high school.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
I suck at first person. They make me feel physically ill because of camera angles. But you did it. Like, because again, it was that social aspect. So you were with
Yeah.
your mates having a go. I used to get in trouble for camping
Yeah.
all the time, which I had no idea what that meant. And I was like, I'm just sitting here to not die. And they're like, yeah, don't do this. Oh, okay. Is that not the point of this game? Fun.
Nice.
Yeah. But I
Yeah.
mean, if you think about a story from your childhood, what would it be? Like a game, sorry, a gaming story from your childhood. For me, it's Pokemon.
Really?
Yeah, I
You don't
was
like Pokemon now?
no, because
Do you?
all the new gen. I'm a Gen 1 stan. Like I
Yeah, same, same.
Gen 2 was fine because I was like I don't know, probably 10 to 12 when like Gen 2 came out, so I could get on board with Gen 2, and then from Gen 3 I have no idea. Zero zero idea what's happening. They just picked animals in the real world and like made them cartoons and like
Mostly.
yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah, interesting. So hang on, so like Red and Blue, you played those
Oh
as a
no
kid?
no no. Yellow because yellow you could
Oh,
get
of
all the
course,
starter Pokemon. There were
definitely.
things that
That's
you
my
could
favorite
do.
too.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I did play. I think I played yellow, red, and blue, even though they're the same game, except yellow you
Wow,
could get everyone. And I played them
nice.
all for 100 hours, and then I got
Wow.
real into Mystery Dungeon, the first one that came out.
I
Um,
never played one of those.
there is one on the Switch, and I bought it, but as an adult, like it doesn't hold the same nostalgia as
Yeah,
it did.
yeah,
I tried to play the open world one, but again, I think like my time with that game is now like past. Like the kids are now doing it, and I have no idea what's happening. Um,
yeah.
but yeah, I remember very fondly. We used to go on holidays every September, and it'd be like mum, dad, my sister, and I, and they would be like going out to the beach, and I just like loaded up my emulator, just played my Pokemon Red.
Nice.
But yeah, I never got green because Bulbasaur ain't it. No offense, Bulbasaur
Ooh,
stands. You're a
yep.
Bulbasaur
My, I
fan,
don't
aren't
know
you?
if you can see it somewhere over there. Yeah,
Yeah,
I've got my
of
own, my
course
one
you are.
soul soft toy. Yeah,
Wait, Steph got me the Charmander, and I can't wait to put it together.
yeah. I know. I saw
What a
your vlog, and you were just like stoked about it. Yeah, it's cool.
amazing number one
Yeah,
Pokemon.
nice, nice. Yeah, I don't actually know. I mean, Pokemon, sure. I don't think I actually played it as much as you did, to be honest. Like, I did play it as a kid, but yeah, like I was done with it. After I was finished. Um, I played a lot of like, I guess, platformer games with my family growing up. So we would do the whole pass the controller thing. Like my
Oh
grandparents
yeah,
would play games.
yeah.
Like we had they had the Super Nintendo before we did. And I think they had like a Atari as well. Like they had all the game consoles before we
The
did.
beginning of the console.
That was the
Yeah.
beginning of my gaming career, I guess. Career. So we played a lot of platformers, but I mean, they're not really like there's a story in those games, like Donkey Kong Country, right? Like that was probably my favorite. Yoshi's Story, those
Oh, Yoshi's
I have
story
fond
was
memories of those.
frustrating as hell. It
It was a
was.
challenging game.
I remember Banjo Kazooie very fondly. I've recently just played it again, to the point where like trans related, I wanted to be Banjo so bad. Like I wanted to be the boy bear
Wow.
with a backpack, and like that was one of the things where I was like, hang
Yeah.
on, my like the fact that I just wanted to be this bear, like in his backpack, like when we were going through all the therapy and stuff where they were asking you about your child, I was like, hang on a minute, Banjo. Like I don't know why I related to this bear so much, but
Yeah, I get you. I get what you mean.
were you an Age of Empires kid?
No, no, I never really
Uh,
played. I did play a little bit of SimCity back in the day on the old Amiga, I think, but other than that, not really. Did you play that?
Oh yeah, with the cheats because I was no good at it. Like I
Nice,
got like the
nice.
big cars and the big stormtrooper things that went out and like got everyone. Obviously,
Of
that's what
course.
happened during those time periods. So I
Yeah.
remember finding my mum's old like, and it was Nintendo, but I don't know when they were released, but the little platformer games that came in like the hard cases, and it was like Oil Spill or something. I think it was Oil Spill. Like she had the Donkey Kong, the original one, and yeah, Oil Spill, and you had to like there's just this building, just this guy like running around trying to catch oil in it, which was real fun. You know,
Wow.
yeah.
It's a riveting concept for a
That's
game, but
maybe
it's
that's
actually
why I only like games that I can do in like 10 to 20 minutes at a time.
yeah, yeah,
Like,
little short,
yeah,
like that's it,
yeah.
contained. Yeah. No, I get that. Games like The Sims, we've talked about it before on the podcast. That one being a huge part of my childhood as well as yours, I think. Those kinds of games where you could build your own stuff and kind of put yourself in the story, those were pretty important. And I think The Sims in particular, because it's like you could see yourself in a way. And I think that was an important part of, experiencing stories and the power of storytelling through gaming. But yeah, I mean, those were the main ones. And then as I got a bit older, it was mostly like, as I said, Mass Effect, Dragon Age, Persona, which I'm playing now. A lot of the JRPGs, Dragon Quest as well. So I'm really playing catch up. Final Fantasy, all the games that I kind of missed when I was younger that I didn't get to play. I'm kind of playing those now, which is quite cool. Doing that as an adult and experiencing those stories.
I remember playing like Square Enix. I'll always be quite a big fan of Square Enix, but I tend to gravitate more towards the pixelated ones,
Yeah.
instead of sort of the real life graphics. But I like one game I'd love to go back and finish is Octopath Traveler, and the second one that came out. But
Oh, did you start it?
I did. I got about
Oh,
halfway.
cool.
I got to 50% of the first one, and then I just never continued on with it. Like
Mhm.
my brain was like, "This is done now, and we will never look at it again."
Same, actually. I tried to finish those games, just
But
couldn't.
like they're an interesting mix of games that probably you gravitate more towards, and like the art style that I like, which is what
Mhm.
drew me to it. But they are very story heavy. Like each character has their own story, and like I think there were
Yeah.
eight. Octo
Yeah.
makes sense. So eight
You got it.
eight people that you like go and you find within your team, and each one has a different story. And obviously, like you do sort of look like for like when you go into anything, right? So you gravitate towards someone more than somebody else. And I thought that was really cool and interesting concept because it was also quite episodic. Like you did one person's story, you then moved on to the next person, and then once you got four, you could then choose people to be in your team across the rest of the story. I paid zero attention to the bigger story. I just paid attention to the the personal narrative that you had with each of the characters.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why I get lost in bigger games like the Mass Effects, is because there's too much. Like there's a lot of story happening outside of just the people, and my
Yeah.
brain has room for one. Like I can do people or I can do bigger story, and the other one just
Mhm.
I don't care about it. So that was probably the most story based game that I've picked up in, I say recent,
Mhm.
it's probably, I don't know, 6 years ago now. It was the first year Rachel and I got together that came out. We've since
Yeah.
got a
Wow.
second one, like in that time. Yeah, it's just interesting what we gravitate towards and what holds our attention. Because I was just thinking, you're talking about The Sims then. I liked, I've always been the kid, and like even in my adult, that will make a narrative about a person in my
Yeah.
head. And like I do it now when I see, like, I wonder what they're doing today, and they're probably doing this, or whatever. Like it's just such a natural thing to build a narrative around people. So I
Yeah.
would like go and plan The Sims out for generations, and I
Wow.
never saw it through because I got bored before that point.
Yeah.
But you'd be like,
Same.
and their kid's gonna grow up to be a doctor, and this kid's gonna grow up to be blah. And I was like, oh, the kids are all adults now. Boring. I don't care.
Yeah. Yeah. And
I'll
when
put it
they when
down.
they gave the Sims autonomy, so they start doing their own thing, you're like, no, I had
No,
plans for you.
excuse me. That's not.
It's
I
not
am
what I wanted
God
for
here,
you.
so
Yeah.
yeah, it's interesting because I gravitate more towards that and
Yeah.
games I can do quickly now, like
Mhm.
Stardew and Chef RPG and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. So tell me about Chef RPG then. Like, what is the story of that game? Like, is it an RPG in the sense that there is a bigger story and you go through and you do stuff, or is it not really like that?
Not really. It's just got game mechanics, right? And I think same with literary RPG as a genre. It just has gaming mechanics in it that are similar to RPGs. So leveling would be
Right.
the thing that Chef RPG has. So you're a chef you're role playing as a chef. Essentially, the story is very simple, and a lot of the games I gravitate towards, again like Stardew, have a very simple premise, and often they will be pretty similar. So
Yeah.
Chef RPG, you wake up one day, your old mentor has given you a note to say, "Hey, I've got this old restaurant in this old sleepy town that I think you'd be really good at running. If you want to get out of the city, go ahead and do it." It's always getting out of the city. You go out of the city to go
Always.
to country. That is the way. And you go into this rundown restaurant that you now need to build up. And like this town has been suffering because there's no tourists anymore. All the tourist attractions have like closed down. So you build up this restaurant. You bring in more clientele, people hear about it. You get like food critics and stuff, which is fun. And I really like
Nice.
cooking, and I like cooking for people. I think I've mentioned that
Yeah.
before. Like I like
Yeah.
creating settings where people can just be and feel comfortable in building their relationships together and having that closeness. So I quite enjoyed that. But I also like designing the restaurant as
Yeah.
well. So you
Right.
get that element as well. Anyway,
Yeah. Yeah.
eventually you finish that one, and then another arc is you build the thing that brought tourists to the town, and you help build up a second restaurant. I think it's a tea house. No, I know it's a tea house because I just finished it. That's essentially
Cute.
it. All you're doing is your
Yeah.
goals are centered around this one thing. There's not a whole bunch of other stuff. But there's stuff you can do, like you can hunt, you can make vegan restaurants if you want to. I know we've spoken about that off camera before.
Yeah, that's cool.
You can interact with like other townspeople, have the relationships, build your relationships and things like that. But it's very much centered around you and your journey.
It sounds like the game provides a shell of a story in order for you to then experience the game mechanics.
Yeah.
And I guess that makes sense that you would like that kind of a those kinds of games that do that. And there's heaps now that are like that. A lot of indie, pixel art games that we've talked about before. And I think those games, I try to like them so hard. Like I think the games where you really do dip in and out, I try to like those games and intend to play them and have fun with them. And I do for a bit, and then I'll get bored of them. And I think mostly it's because I do crave that bigger, setting for me to then go and, like, for example, I know I keep going back to Mass Effect, but it's what I know. The world is there, or the universe is there, and even though it's a linear game, it's not open world, right? Like, you can't just go anywhere, but you do have some choice over where you go. But you can go to one planet and experience the story on that planet, and that story will then connect with the overarching story as well, and progress through that story as well. So I think that's what I typically will seek in a game. Like, even right now I'm playing Persona 5 Royal, and although I love the game, the reason I haven't finished it still is because it is it's a bit of a slog, right? Like, you're constantly going through, like, it's I think most people at this point know Persona, but you're basically a high school kid, and there's a bit of like a mysterious paranormal kind of things that happens as well, and you can kind of affect certain people, mostly adults, doing bad things. You're kind of taking the perspective of a kid with a group of friends, and you can kind of see all these adults around you doing all this shady stuff, and you can kind of affect that a little bit. But the way that the story is set up, like the actual mechanics of the game, you have basically a calendar year, and you're going through that year. So each day is like a whole, it's a whole other day where you can choose what you want to do. But I find those kinds of games a little bit more monotonous. So I do enjoy it, but like, it's hard for me to really get into that. Whereas a game like Mass Effect or Dragon Age, where it really guides you through a linear story, kind of like reading a book from beginning to end. It's the same kind of, it's guiding you through that. But then along the way, you can kind of stop and speak to these characters over here having a conversation, and go find out this, side quest and do this other thing over here. And I think that's what keeps me interested. And those are the kinds of stories that I typically will sort of seek out in games.
It's so funny because I prefer that in book form, 100%.
Yeah.
Like everything you just said about Mass Effect, I'm like, yeah, I love that in books. I don't want it in gaming. I don't want it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fascinating.
Yeah, it is. But I know we've spoken about it before, but you being stressed out by things like Stardew Valley, and I think it's a similar concept to Persona 5, where each day there are like 100 things you need to do, like to progress in the game, because it's very, like, if you're a list ticker, you probably like something like a Stardew Valley, because you have very set goals, very things that you need to do are like get bundles and stuff to open up a community center and things like that, but you need to like grind to get all these things. So what was it about it that stressed you out? Because I'm guaranteeing that, like, I think that's what I enjoy about it, is all the things that stress you out about it.
Yeah, I think it's what you said. Like, for me, it's the time limit. I don't like games that give me a time limit, really. So I think with Persona, at least, or at least Persona 5 and Persona 4, there's only certain things you can do in a day, but like, there's no ticking clock. I don't like the concept of a ticking clock, because I know, like, if I just like leave the game for a moment, or if I'm over here doing this other thing, I'm thinking over here, I need to really get over here and do that and go to bed early, because otherwise I'm going to pass out, and so like that whole thing. And I know there's like no consequences, but I can't help it.
No, I know, I get it. It's so funny. The bedtime thing. So Rachel and I both have played Stardew Valley and put a considerable number of hours into Stardew Valley. And the bedtime thing, like, I'm such a rule follower that every single time I would be in bed with hours within my time limit. I'm not risking going to a mine at like midnight, because at 2 a.m. You're passing out and you've got no energy the next day. I'd be like tucked in bed at like 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock every night.
So
And
you play the game like you play your real life.
yes, yeah, I get up early, I'm farming from dawn till dusk, and then, go to the mine, whatever. And Rachel, every time, passes out at 2 a.m. in the morning. And I was like, just gives me so much anxiety if we play together because I'm like, no, get to bed. Like, it's just,
What are you doing?
I woke her up, like, I woke up at midnight because she wasn't in bed last night to be like, hey, excuse me, just want to, like, let you know that it's bedtime.
Just politely
Are
letting you know
are
that maybe
you,
you should think about going to
are
bed.
you aware that you're not in bed right now?
Oh, it's just such a silly thing though, but I don't like it. It just does stress me out. And any game like that, it's not just Stardew. I pick on Stardew because it's the most common one. But games that have those kinds of ticking clock mechanics.
To be fair,
It's
anyone
kind of
who's waiting for Chucklefish to bring out a new game, like Stardew is all we have, and it's all we've had for a decade or however long it's been out.
yeah,
So,
right. Are they? Is there talk about some new one? Or...
we've got Witchbrook and the Haunted Chocolatier, and none
Oh
of them
wow.
are out yet, and I'm waiting for Kickstarters. I'm like, I'll back it, I'll pay for it to happen. Like, just give it to me.
So you'll disappear for a little while when those ones come out and then resurface.
Maybe.
Maybe. Or dip in and out.
Yeah.
That's fine too.
No, normally, like
Yeah.
the first few days, I'll play like a handful of hours, and then I'll be like, like I've got the gist of it now, so that's all good. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting. Whereas when Veilguard comes out
I'll see you in 3
this
days.
week, so I took more time off work to play it.
Nice.
Yeah, I had a few extra days because I planned it so the day it's out it's this Friday, I guess. I'm off work or Thursday. Yeah, Thursday. And then I took a few extra days off because I'm just like, I know I'm not gonna be done with this game, obviously. So
I
why
think-
not treat myself?
Rachel's given herself the day off. She's self-employed. She's like that the
Nice.
day. I'm getting it delivered, so I don't think we're going to get it the day of. I think it'll be a couple of days after. But yeah, I will probably lose her for a little while. It doesn't take her long to get 100 hours up though.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we'll see. We'll see how quickly I play these ones because, like I said, I don't do that easily now. But I think for things like Veilguard, any Dragon Age, any Mass Effect, there's a handful of games where I will just disappear, and that's certainly one of them. So we'll see. I think by next episode you'll know what happened.
In the essence of time, I have a question that I want to ask you because usually September, October is, for anyone who doesn't know, it's big in the gaming news world. We get a lot of like directs that happen where we look at what's coming up for the next sort of 12 to 18 months in the gaming world. So a lot of the big producers will put out their trailers and their gameplay trailers as well. How many games have you pre-ordered or are thinking about right now for 2025? And what are they? Because I'm interested, because I also have got my eyes on a few, but they're going to be completely different to yours.
So interestingly, this is the first year in probably my entire adult life where I have not looked because I've just been so busy with other things. So for the first time in my life, I don't know what's coming out. I have not looked. And I'm kind of okay with that because now I get the surprise factor. Because when I was doing notes for this episode, I realized, the Horizon has a remastered version. This game's coming out, that game's coming out, and I had no idea. And I was just like, now I get this element of surprise where I get to experience that. So to answer your question, I have no idea. I've got none. It's literally just the Veilguard, which is going to be my next, however many months.
The next
of gaming.
obsession, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And I still have all these other games on my I haven't finished Baldur's Gate, so that's so yeah, no idea. I've got no clue. If you know of a game that I'm gonna like, please tell me.
Well, no, I'm
because
not going to take that surprise element away from you. I don't like
for the
surprises.
listeners as well, please. So that's not gonna work.
Oh, I need to go and look at everything before they come, so I'm not shocked at all. There's only one that I've looked at that I'm interested in for the Xbox. Now, I do have an Xbox. Is it a glorified DVD player? Yes. At the moment. But I bought Banishers and Lies of P, which I genuinely
that coming to Xbox?
very interested to play. But I know that they're bigger games than I'm ready for right now. Like, I don't have days to sit down. I do so many things during the day that I've got an hour maybe that I can play it, and it's not really enough time to get immersed in that story. That first, I know the first time you play it, you need a couple of hours just to get your brain in it.
Just to go through the tutorial, basically.
But I'm interested in Avowed, which is coming out early next year, which I think is fantasy
Is
RPG-esque.
that the pixel art one that I
No,
played?
no, it's not pixel art.
Oh, that's
It's
Unavowed. Never mind, a different
no,
game.
yeah.
That was good.
Yeah. But in the pixel art in the indie world, I'm looking at, I think it's Little Sim World or something that's coming out, which is basically like a pixel art version of The Sims with less choice and things like that. But it looks super cute. The art style looks really cute. Super Zoo Story is coming out. Hopefully, we'll get the beta before the end of the year. And then I think that's pretty much it for the ones that I'm like, I'm ready. I'm ready for them to come out. I'm ready to sink my teeth into it and play them.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, a lot of the games that I'm waiting for, they don't have release dates, and they probably won't for a good while.
I
Like
know.
whatever new Mass Effect game, and
Yeah, I know that Rachel's like ready for Death Stranding too. Like she just loves that director. I can't pronounce the name. Um,
oh yeah, what's his name?
I
Yeah,
don't
I
know.
know who
I
you mean.
can't. I cannot pronounce it. I know who he is. He's done a lot of weird and wonderful things.
Mhm.
But Rach probably played Death Stranding. I don't know, 4, 5 times through now. I think that just tickles
Wow.
the completionist itch because you build road all over
Yeah.
America. Like you build
Yep.
roads and like there's bad things and whatever. And the storyline is there and it's quite intense. Like that's a horrific story that you're going through.
Yeah. So I've
Um,
heard from what I've seen as well. Yeah.
and but visually stunning. Like you talk about cinematics, that game has some incredible cinematics, and
Yeah.
also Assassin's Creed Shadow,
Yeah. The
whatever the
the one set in
Yotai one.
Japan.
Yeah,
Well, there's
um,
two. There's the Assassin's Creed, whatever, I don't know what it's called, but the one set in Japan that's coming out. I think isn't that this year or is that
it
next
got
year?
pushed back to February
Ah,
14th, and I was like, what a
okay.
cute
That one I'll
Valentine's
probably
Day
play.
present
Oh,
for me to get
nice.
Rach.
I'll note that down for
Yeah,
for future reference.
just slip it in under like Steph's pillow and be like,
Hint,
hey,
hint.
Feb
Yeah,
14th, this is the
yeah.
thing.
We can play
Um,
it together. Hey.
yeah,
And then there's the other one that's the sequel to the one that I mentioned. Oh, Ghost of Tsushima.
I'll go to Yotai. Yeah.
Yotai. Yeah, yeah. So like both of those look great, but again, like they're massive time sinks, right? Like that's the the downside.
I will
Like
say, watching Rach play Ghost of Tsushima, like again, cinematically, beautiful.
so beautiful.
It's
Like
such a beautiful
I could
game.
just watch that game. Like,
I
and I think because I streamed that game, and most of the time I was just sitting there just watching.
Yeah, I did see a
Just so
controller
good.
nearly fly through the television a couple of times because Rachel plays hard or expert.
Oof.
Even from the
It's not
get-go, there is no normal in this house.
wow.
She's currently playing.
I got no time for that.
I don't know. She's playing Ronin at the moment, and she started it on hard mode. And like, I'm like, how is this enjoyable for you? You're just swearing at the television.
Yeah, no. Yeah, we didn't really even get into like combat mechanics and stuff
Yeah,
and
yeah.
like difficulty levels and stuff and how that affects story, but like for reference, that's not what I play. Like it's either normal, mostly normal, sometimes easy if I just want to fly through a story, because sometimes like the combat will just get in the way and I'm just like don't have time. I'm too old for that.
I think of like any game that I played for the story, probably like the Tomb Raider, like the three Tomb Raiders that came out more recently than anything
I
else.
do have so Fable. You've mentioned Fable to me before.
Love Fable. Yeah.
What do you love about Fable and like how? Because it's an interesting category because there's choices, but it's also story and maybe more than what you like now. So
Again, I didn't really pay attention to the story at all. You asked me the story of Fable, I
makes
had no
sense.
fucking clue.
I don't either. I
None.
played them and I still don't know.
But Fable 2 and Fable 3, I think by the time I got to Fable, like the first one wasn't released on whatever the second Xbox was. So I came in at 2. I've since played the first one through Steam. But I like the visuals. I love the magic. So because I'm a fantasy stan, like I would be a magic user every time, but I also like the consequences. So if you play as a villain, so you can play as a villain or a hero. I would always play the hero. But if you do villainous actions, your body would get scarred through it.
Yeah,
And like
which Mass Effect does as well.
yeah,
Yeah,
and I thought that was really cool. But yeah, I just loved I think the world again for me, like I liked the dark, grungy, having to travel by foot and seeing the world as it was. A lot of the vocals as well. I know that sounds silly because I didn't pay attention to any of the story, even though like I just played it in a linear fashion to get to the end. But some of the voice work in it was just amazing. And like just listening to the vocals. There's one voice actor, I have no idea what their name is or what gender they are or whatever. But every time I think of Fable, I think of this person's voice. and like it's such a nostalgic feeling for me. Anyway, there is one
Nice.
coming out. It's the whole reason I bought the Xbox is because there's one that's coming out only for Xbox, and I'm like, well, I have to play that when that comes out. And you know
Nice.
what? I'll play it for 10 hours over 2 days, and it'll be dead to me until I pick it up in 12 months' time.
Yeah, probably. I'm curious because I probably won't play it. So when that game does, because I'm very curious about those games. That was is it Peter Molyneux, the developer of that game? Because for a while he was doing some really experimental things, and I guess that was one of them at the time. But those types of story games fascinate me, but I just don't have the patience to play them. So please do tell me all about that one whenever that comes out.
I'm pretty sure there was a village and it got rampaged by fire and monsters, but I was like, that's every fantasy story that's ever existed. So, generic fantasy beginning.
Yeah,
Okay. As a
it's
fire
fun.
town, kids are orphaned and now they have to grow up and be heroes. Like, okay, cool.
Cool.
It's the same everywhere. Yeah.
Anything else you wanted to add? Anything I've missed
Did
or
we,
that you wanted to,
did we
to
talk
mention?
about storytelling in gaming or we just talk about games that we
I think we
enjoy?
did both. I think we did both pretty well.
If the audience wants to let us know, then by all means. Also, if you want to let us know if this audio was better, because Ryan has very graciously lent me a USB mic, that'd be great, instead of just the headset.
Yeah, no, please do give us some feedback, and that goes across the board as well. So if there's anything else that you want us to talk about, or any other feedback you want to give us, please do. We're open to that. Also, I hope my audio is good because it was too hot to not have my fan on today. So
We're coming into
you
summer
might
in
have a,
Australia, team. Like it's
I'm
about
gonna,
to be survival instincts up in here.
I'm gonna be so grumpy. It's like red face and just grumpy.
We'll talk
Yeah,
about survival games at some point.
yeah, 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 like real life. Cool.
Just
Well,
waking up is a survival game.
survival. Yeah, that was
Yeah,
that did pop into my
yeah.
mind just then. Yeah. Cool. Well, look, that about does it for today's episode. So thank you for watching or listening. To watch the video version of the podcast, head on over to Genre Blender Podcast on YouTube, or search for Genre Blender on Spotify Podcasts. If you prefer to listen to the audio only version is available on Apple Podcasts or Spotify in your podcast app of choice. You'll find the show notes in the description for each episode. For access to the book discussions, so we'll be doing more of those in future as well. We did Jeff Vandermeer's Southern Reach trilogy, but there'll be others down the pipeline, I'm sure. But you can access those through our Patreon, and you can just search for Genre Blender. But you can follow us at Genre Blender Podcast on Instagram and TikTok for clips of the show, and genreblenderpodcast.com for all our social media links. Kris is at A Fictional Escapist on YouTube and Instagram. I'm at ryan.floyd on Instagram. So please follow us there for any updates, or in my case, no updates because I'm terrible at social media.
Because we're time poor and we decide to have hobbies.
We've established that, right?
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
So to all the world hoppers out there, we wish you safe travels and we will catch you in the next episode where, ironically, we will be talking about how hobbies fit into our lives. So that's timely.
Perfect.
Coming into it. But
And that
until...
wasn't intentional at all.
yeah, we just wink, wink, nudge, nudge. But until then, team, ciao.
See y'all.